Hello, Book 2. I have some more new arrivals to show you. I've got 6 books here, and I haven't read a single blessed one of them, so we'll be learning about them all together. Although a couple of them are on my immediate radar. I haven't read any of them, but a couple of them I will be reading today. This first one is, I guess, something in a series. We saw a version of this. This is from Reaction Press, which was distributed by the University of Chicago Press. We saw a book like this on Saturn, and now there's one on Mars. And these are thin, heavily illustrated guides to everything that we currently know about the target planet. Really hoping, I don't really know, I should look it up and see. I'm really hoping that Reaction Books does one of these for every planet in the solar system. That would be incredible. What a collection that would be to have. And this is by Stephen James O'Meara. And this is, there you see Mars. There's a polar ice cap up there. Mars is a small world with a big reputation. This mysterious, singular planet, with volcanoes that dwarf Mount Everest, a canyon system that would stretch fully across the United States, and a curious landscapes that perhaps once harbored water. No perhaps about it. They certainly did. Mars certainly had surface water. Once upon a time in Earth's history, if you'd have been able to breathe the atmosphere in what is now Central Asia, and looked up in the sky at night with a telescope, all these anachronisms, if you would have been able to see blue on the surface of Mars, I feel sure of it. This planet has fascinated us for centuries. In the most up-to-date account available of the elusive red planet, Stephen James O'Meara follows our long-standing love affair with this unique celestial body from the musings of humanity's first stargazers to the imaginings of science fiction writers, radio broadcasters, and filmmakers to the latest images and discoveries from the Curiosity rover. The book also reveals plans for piloted missions to Mars and what it will take for those missions to succeed. So, if you are a space junkie, as I am, if you're a NASA junkie, as I am, you're going to be able to predict 95% of this book. You will know it'll start with mythology. It'll go on to Percival Lowell. It will go on to Orson Welles. It will go on to John Carter of Mars. And it will go on to projected Earth habitats. It'll go on to Andy Weir, the Martian. It will check all of those boxes. There's no way that it won't. And I think that's a little bit of a shame in that. We don't need to rehearse Percival Lowell for the millionth time. Big a fan as I am of him, and an advocate of mine that his works should be in print. I still think what we know currently about the planet Mars is so vast, so extensive, that it could fill a book this size easily without any of that padding. And I'm hoping that this doesn't have much of that padding. As the manned mission to Mars, I don't know, is that what the Space Force is for? It's going to be prohibitively expensive, and it will almost certainly result in catastrophic failure the first time at bat, in which everyone dies. Now, it is possible to do. It is certainly possible to make a self-sustaining colony on the surface of Mars. But I think the first try will be a PR nightmare, the like of which NASA does not like to repeat. I think the first try will result in everyone dying. Second try, probably not. Third try, definitely not. But the first try, I don't think that will happen. It might be some other program. It might not be American. Some other program might put people on Mars. But one time I was in a reception line for George H.W. Bush when he was running for president. George H.W. Bush came to an event that I happened to be at, and as usual, when he was done with all of his remarks and everything, there was just a line of people to shake his hand. And I was in that line, and I was wondering when I was in line, will a politician out stumping on the campaign trail just promise anything? Will they literally promise anything, even if they obviously know nothing about it, have never thought about it before you bring it up? And I wanted to test it, but I didn't want to be rude. So when it came time for me to shake his hand, I said, any chance of stepping up the plans for the manned Mars expedition? He said, well, get right on it. So I take that for what it's worth. But I am fascinated by the planet Mars. Absolutely fascinated by it. Fascinated to know what a near miss it is. How close it is in some ways to Earth. There are parts of Mars right around there, right around that longitude and latitude, up near the polar ice caps, where if you were suddenly transported, just instantaneously transported to the surface of Mars, in that latitude, laying flat on the ground, not standing up. The atmosphere doesn't go up that high. You would immediately start to die. But laying flat on the ground, where the atmosphere is, there are portions of Mars where if you snapped your fingers and magically transported to that exact spot, laying on the ground, you would not be cold and you would not be suffocating. You would be looking up at the sky from another world. That's how close some parts of Mars are to an Earth biosphere. Now, other parts, of course, no, but other parts of Earth aren't close to what you could live on either. So I just think it's fascinating. So it's on my list. Looking forward to it. Then this next one, a famous name, much talked about name on BookTube. This is Sebastian Barry, and this is his new book. His new book comes out in April, late April. This is 1,000 Moons by Sebastian Barry. And Sebastian Barry's 1,000 Moons continues the story begun in Days Without End. His violent, superbly lyrical Western, which won the Costa Book of the Year Award, was longlisted for the Booker and received rave reviews for its depiction of love story between two young Civil War soldiers. And is also one of the very rare, might be still unique to this day, instances in which Eric Carl Anderson, the Lonesome Reader, a fellow booktuber, actually expressed anger on his channel. He's such a genial person on his channel that it was rare to see, and he expressed it about the handling of that book. Barry is known and widely praised for his fine lyrical prose. A novelist, poet, and playwright, he was born in Dublin. Naturally, if he has lyrical prose, of course he was born in Dublin. And he's the author of 7 novels, all about the McNultys, whose characters are based on members of the author's own family. And in this book is told from the perspective of Winona, a young Lakota Sioux girl orphaned in the Indian Wars. She is now a teenager on the cusp of adulthood, scraping by on a farm in western Tennessee with her adoptive father, Thomas McNulty, and his lover and brother-in-arms, John Cole, as well as 2 freed slaves. This unconventional family tries to keep the brutal post-Civil War world at bay, along with their memories of the past, but Tennessee is a state still riven by the bitter legacy of conflict. When first Winona and then one of the freed slaves are violently attacked by forces unknown, the local militia is raised. But armed with a knife, a borrowed gun, and the courage of her famous warrior mother, Winona decides to take matters into her own hand. So, same general atmosphere, but it sounds like a totally different kind of book. Gotta love it when an author does that. Just gotta love it. Let me put all the paperwork back in here. All right, then the next one is coming out in June. This is a work of history. I think I have a cover for you. Yes, this is by Robert Galately, and it's called Hitler's True Believers. I don't know if you can make that out. Oxford always does this. They don't have the full cover. They have a JPEG of the cover ready, but not the whole thing for their advanced copies. This comes out in June. It is, of course, an incredibly touchy subject, but that doesn't tell you anything. That's not what it's going to look like. Understanding Adolf Hitler's ideology provides insights into the mental world of the extremist politics that, over the course of the Third Reich, developed explosive energies culminating in the Second World War and the Holocaust. Too often the theories underlying National Socialism or Nazism are dismissed as an irrational hodgepodge of ideas. Yet that same ideology drove Hitler's quest to power in 1933, colored everything in the Third Reich, and transformed him, however briefly, into the most powerful leader in the world. He was never that. He was never even close to that. Hitler became a representative figure for ideas, emotions, and aims that he shared with thousands, and eventually millions, of true believers who were on the same wavelength. They projected onto him the properties of the necessary leader, a commanding figure at the head of a uniformed corps that would rally the masses and storm the barricades. Ordinary citizens adapted aspects of National Socialism and shared a collective desire to create a harmonious, racially select community of the people, to build on Germany's socialist-oriented political culture and seek a national renewal. And you notice what the author isn't, the publicist writing this sheet is not directly saying. They are not directly mentioning 21st century America. They're talking about divisive politics, racial purity, a fanatical base, but they aren't explicitly talking about 21st century America. It's going to be impossible for a 21st century American to read this book without thinking about the world since 2016. It's going to be impossible to do. I admit that I'm not going to be able to do it. I will try to keep those thoughts out of my review, but I won't be able not to think them. Because prior to 2016, I, like a lot of people of my generation, largely scorned the German, the common man in the German street, so to speak, that stereotype, as someone who knuckled under to a froth, spittle, wild-eyed madman, a racist, sexist, fascist, lying moron, and just went along. And I thought that despite large amounts of written contemporaneous evidence that ordinary Germans did not do that. They went along rather than die, and because they couldn't afford to emigrate. But they didn't actually believe. They just thought, this guy's insane, this program might have a couple of good benefits, but it's largely not me. It's largely distasteful and gross, and it'll blow over. And it didn't blow over until their country was destroyed, was reduced to rubble. I don't think any of them saw that coming. I don't think any of them expected that. And I think if enough of them had thought, well, I've gamed this out probabilistically, and there's only one way this is going to end if we don't kill this guy, and that is that he's going to kill us. I think if enough of them had gamed that out and seen that, the ordinary Germans would have been... See, it's already got me thinking along those lines. The horrible thing, I've always said, the most horrible thing about the election of Donald Trump to the U.S. presidency was not having a racist, sexist, fascist, lying moron in the Oval Office. It was knowing suddenly having revealed to me how many of my fellow countrymen wanted that, liked that. Probably not because in their own private life in Spokane or Oshkosh, they themselves are lying, sexist, fascist morons, but because they like the anti-PC nature, the in-your-face nature, the feeling of finally culturally winning against people who speak in complete sentences, or have some sort of illusionary superiority on the coasts. One way or another, it wasn't until that election and its immediate aftermath that I suddenly realized I knew lots of those people, and that they hate what I love. It wasn't until the aftermath of that election that I realized that those people were there and that they are my fellow Americans. I feel certain now that I was unfair to that ordinary German man in the street. I feel certain that he and his wife and his in-laws and his aunts all had that same revelation. Oh my. The people at the other end of the street that we regularly socialize with actually do like this guy. They actually do want Jews rounded up and murdered by the millions. And we've known them all this time, and we didn't know that. We didn't know how comfortable they would be with fascism until it came along. I'm going to try my hardest to keep such thoughts out of consideration with this book. I can't help but think them while I'm reading it, but it's not fair to the book to review the book with that in mind. But the echoes are pretty precise. So, anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to more congenial material. Like for instance, this is coming out real soon. Yeah, mid-February. This is I think the only finished copy that I have here. This is Salt River by Randy Wayne White. This is a Doc Ford novel. The Doc Ford novels are set in Florida. They're absolutely fantastic. This is like the 30th one, and they're tremendously good. They're a tremendous evocation of every aspect of Florida, especially wild Florida, but also terrifically constructed on their own. This is the 26th. In this latest high-stakes adventure, marine biologist and former government agent Doc Ford is sure he's beyond the point of being surprised by his longtime pal Tomlinson's madcap tales of his misspent youth. But he's stunned anew when avowed bachelor Tomlinson reveals that as a younger man strapped for cash, he unwittingly fathered multiple children via for-profit sperm bank donations. Thanks to genealogy websites, Tomlinson's now grown-up offsprings have tracked him down, seeking answers about their roots. But Doc quickly grows suspicious that one of them might be planning something far more nefarious than a family reunion. But that's not all, because although all of the Doc Ford novels have outrain plot lines like that, there's also always a parallel plot line that involves Doc Ford personally, and that is going to end up entwined with the real one. And I think we get that here. With recent history on his mind, Doc is unsurprised when his own dicey past is called into question. Months ago, he quietly liberated a cache of precious Spanish coins from a felonious treasure hunter, And now a number of unsavory individuals, including a disgraced IRS investigator and a corrupt Bahamian customs agent, are after their cut. Caught between watching his own back and Tomlinson's, Doc has no choice but to get creative before rash past decisions escalate to deadly present-day dangers. And half the fun of this kind of a novel, aside from White is just such a terrific writer. He just is. He's just such a terrific writer. But half the fun is going to be trying to figure out, before it's revealed, how those two things are connected. They are going to be connected. I feel certain that they are. Every once in a while, a Doc Ford novel will connect those two parallel plot lines only because Doc Ford himself is involved in both of them. That always feels like a bit of a disappointment. I'm hoping that's not one of them, but I'll take it either way, because this is just a terrific series. Starts with Sanibel Flats. Go and find it at your library. Go and find it at your nearest paperback bookstore. We'll have a mass market paperback of Sanibel Flats, and get that book and read it. You'll be hooked, and you've got a huge series to read if you are. Then this next book is from the folks at Princeton University Press. And it comes out in mid-April, and I'm not quite sure what to think about it. Our last two books are illustrated. This is by J. David Velleman. It's called On Being Me, A Personal Invitation to Philosophy. And there is a Gen Z sitting on a broken classical column, staring at a phone. For almost 40 years, renowned moral philosopher J. David Velleman has spent his career studying why being a person feels like this to him. Sounds like a great use of your study time. In his new book, a concise, accessible, and intimate exploration of humanity's vital concerns, whether or not the corner shop has any mega stuffed Oreos left is a vital concern. How you are you, with all of those words in italics, not so vital. It offers compelling insights into what it means to be human, written in the first person. Each of the author's short personal chapters begins with a theme. Being glad I was born, fearing the end, regretting what might have been, making things happen, wanting to be loved. Reflecting on how daily life presents us with thorny riddles that need working out, Velleman arrives at unexpected conclusions about survival and personal identity, the self and its future, time and morality, and the rationality of regret, free will, and personal efficacy. Okay, let me show you a picture. The illustrator is Emily Bernstein. Her style is well known. I'm sure that if I tried, I could remember where I've seen her artwork before. But I have seen her artwork before. And there you have sort of pictorial representations of philosophical musings. On Being Me is the name of the book. It's a tiny little thing. If I were to write a book called On Being Me, I guarantee you it would be a chunkster. It would be huge. And then this last one, when does this come out? This is a full-blown graphic novel. This isn't just illustrated. It's told in illustrations. This comes out, on January 28th. So this is right around the corner. This is by Andy Warner, and it's called Spring Rain, a graphic memoir of love, madness, and revolutions. Again, not very thick. None of these books are very thick this time around. In 2005, New York Times bestselling author and acclaimed graphic artist Andy Warner traveled to Lebanon to study literature in Beirut, one of the world's most cosmopolitan and storied cities. Okay. All right, fine. If that's your story and you're sticking to it, that's not the only reason you went to Beirut in 2005. Okay. You went to Beirut in 2005 hoping that something would happen to you. If you wanted to study literature and life, you could have gone to Paris or Bonn. You went to Beirut. You did that for a reason. No sensible person goes to Beirut without having that on their mind when they do. But as long as you're okay. During his time there, Warner grew close to a crowd of mostly LGBTQ students and suffered a mental breakdown while the city erupted in revolution. 20 years old and recently broken up from his girlfriend, Warner feels his life is both intense and directionless. Immersing himself in the vibrant and diverse city, he quickly befriends a group of students, including both foreigners and Lebanese, straddling different histories and embracing the freedoms of a multicultural city. Warner and his friends dance, do drugs, and hook up, even as violence breaks out in the city, the scars of a 15-year civil war reopening with a series of political assassinations and bombings. and I want to show you. I was struck by the artwork is not exactly my style, but then again, DC comic books is my style. If Kurt Swan had drawn this, I'd be overjoyed. But this is, but I still kind of like the look of it. You've got stylized comic stuff like this, but let me show you. You've also got stylized comic stuff, but you've also got photorealistic stuff that the author mixes in. Oh, are you going to behave? Are you going to show me something of what I'm talking about here? Yeah, here we go. Something like that, where where this is a cartoon overlay of a photo of designed to look you present the "you are there" type feeling. So this comes out right away. It will take me no time at all to read this. So I will put this and the Randy Wayne White on the list for today, and see what it can teach me about Lebanon. So we have those are some new arrivals for your consideration. We have Spring Rain. We have On Being Me, a personal invitation to the wonders of philosophy. We have Salt River by Randy Wayne White. Definitely find this author. Oh my God! If you are one of those, I hear from a lot of you now that I put my email in every video. Feel free to email me about anything at all. I will get back to you. I'm not sure how fast I will, but I will. But I hear from people all the time now. And before I left my video, I heard it in comments on my videos. People saying, I love the feeling of a book and series. So do I. Who doesn't? But I want to know which ones are good, and I'd like it if they were really long, because there is a wonderful feeling to starting a long series of books if someone whose opinion you trust has recommended them because the whole series is good. There's a wonderful feeling in that. Well, this is one of those series. So find Sanibel Flats. Make the acquaintance of Doc Ford and his colorful cast of characters and White's version of Florida. And then just buy them all, read them all at the library, whatever, however you do it. You can find all of them. They're in many, many different formats. I remember when they weren't hardcovers. But this is one of those series to just mine from beginning to end. Then we have Hitler's True Believers. How Ordinary Germans Became Nazis. I am going into this book under the conviction, that most Germans did not. That most Germans did not become Nazis, as they themselves said when the war was over. We went along to get along, but we never believed any of that insane stuff. I used to say, well, okay, it's easy for you to say that now when your hide is on the line, but you didn't say it then. Well, I am going into this book under the impression that a majority of the people in Germany at the time, in the 30s, didn't agree with any of this stuff and did not become fervent true believers. There was only ever, comparatively speaking, a minority, up to maybe 35, 40%, but still not the whole country. That's what I'm going in believing. We'll see what the author does to that belief. That's always the thrill of reading history, is that you could come out with a completely different set of interpretations. Then we have 1,000 Moons by Sebastian Barry, and an author who really needs no introduction on BookTube. His last book was a BookTube darling. And then lastly, Stephen James O'Meara's overview of Mars. What we know, what we've always thought, and whether or not we will go there, and how. So there you go. Those are some new arrivals for you. I'm going to wrap this up before it gets too long, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.